everybody, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new here, and welcome back to 31 Days of December. We are about halfway through now, and today I'm going to be talking about two things that don't necessarily go together. And it's going to be a little weird for me too, because I had actually never heard of this until I started doing some research. Those two things are werewolves and Christmas. Yeah, you heard me, werewolves and Christmas. Now, bear with me here. There are a lot of things that have kind of encompassed why werewolves and Christmas go together, and I find it all very, very interesting. So, at the beginning of it all, there are quite a few things that people insist are the origins of why werewolves and Christmas go together. So one of the things that people believe predates Christmas is the widespread pagan belief that was popular in Europe during the winter solstice, that it was a significant time for monsters, be it werewolves, vampires, etc., to roam freely on this plane because the year was at its darkest point. As we all know, for winter solstice, it's the shortest day of the year, so there's not a lot of light, so it's just more ability for them to move freely around, which is why there is that kind of part of it. The second thing is, one of the theories is that the birthplace of werewolves actually came from a Greek monster. I am not going to attempt to say his name, but I'm going to put it above my head, who was a monkey-like demon creature who spent most of the year underground trying to chop down the world tree. But after sunset between December 25th and January 6th, the beast came out to run amok and scare horses. Their terrorizing could be remedied, though, by simply putting a colander on your porch so that it would compulsively count the holes until the break of day and then return to their home. And this is kind of one of the things that they believe is where werewolves stemmed from and why they're connected to Yule. One of the other ones actually comes from a time when it was believed that people who were actually turning into werewolves were being cursed, and generally being cursed by priests or saints for punishing you for something that you had done. So back in ancient times, back in like the 14th century, they actually believed that if you failed to attend annual confession at Easter and at Christmas, that you would actually fall to this lupine curse and become a werewolf because you sinned, basically. So in the 14th century in Normandy, there was another person, and I'm, again, not going to attempt this word because that's just way too much for my brain, that was excommunicated, who became a werewolf between Christmas and Candlemas, or during Advent. During this time, the sinner was either redeemed or doomed to belong to the devil and run as a wolf forever. Which, in Finland, if you were lucky enough to break the spell, you were still stuck with a wolf's tail for the rest of your life. So what it says is the curses abounded for anyone with the misfortune to be born on the wrong day. In Italy, it was bad luck to be born on winter solstice, December 20th to 21st, and a sure way to become a shapeshifter. In many other European countries, such as Poland, it was believed that children born on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day automatically became werewolves when they grew up. Germany, a child was still in danger of becoming one if he or she was born during the 12 nights of Christmas, which run from the 25th until the Feast of the Epiphany on January 6th. So you can see that no matter what culture this is in, the dates all pretty much run true to being between Yule and the 6th of January. It was basically agreed upon that it was a divine punishment for blasphemy. They also viewed it as why it was targeting children born between these days is because that child was seen as competing with the birth of Christ and therefore was bad, I guess. I don't know. Like, how can a child determine when it's born? I'm sorry, like, it's a baby. It comes when they're ready to come. And if that happens to fall during those days, like, sorry. But you can't just like stuff it back in there and be like, nope, you gotta wait for another 12 days because I'm not having you. Now, in Romania, this entire myth basically went a step further, and children that were conceived on Christmas Eve were also considered to be cursed and become werewolves because they were supposed to have abstained from sex at the time. So not only are you not allowed to have children during this time period, you are also not allowed to have sex during this time period and conceive a child. And of course, back then, they know that children are generally about 9 months along, so they can count. And if you conceived sometime at the end of December, your child is cursed. When Yule was originally celebrated, especially on the 21st of December, it was traditionally celebrated as the first day of the 12 days of Yule, where the veil was actually thinner during that time, and people actually stayed indoors most of the nights because they believed that supernatural creatures were roaming around the darkness. And that actually included werewolves. Now, it wasn't until 1555 when a Swedish archbishop named Olaus Magnus wrote the history of the northern peoples, and he talked about the festival of Christmas. And there was a strange conversation of men. There was a strange conversion of men into wolves. And there is a gathering of a huge multitude of wolves, which have been changed from men, which during the night rage with such fierceness that the inhabitants suffer more hurt from them than they ever do from natural wolves. For these human wolves break down doors and descend into cellars where they drink out whole tuns of beer or mead. So basically what he's saying is that during this time period, men are turning into wolves and breaking in to drink themselves drunk, I guess. And then there was another person named Caspar Pucer who recorded a similar legend of mass lycanthropy in 1560 in Livonia, which is now Estonia and Latvia, because we have to keep changing place names. And at Christmas, a boy lame of leg goes around the countryside summoning the devil's followers, which are many to a general conclave. The human form vanishes and the whole multitude becomes wolves. They fall upon herds of cattle and flocks of sheep. The entire transformation, he wrote, lasts 12 days, and at the expiration of which the wolf skin vanishes and the human form reappears. So again, that's where you can see the whole 12 days of Yule, 12 days of Christmas. There's also in some parts of Poland where they believe that werewolves are transformed into their animal form twice. So they believe that it's on Midsummer Day and on Christmas. In Slovenia, the 12 days of Christmas were actually known as Wolf Days because of this legend. And the original story was that the wolf shepherd or master of wolves was active during that time and could do the most damage then. Later, the story shifted so that Saint Blaise, who was the saint of the wild beast, became the wolf shepherd, and it was his job to summon wild wolves and banish them for a time, thus preserving the herds and livestock from being eaten. Basically, all of Europe believes that if for whatever reason you have sinned, you have been born or conceived during the 12 days of Yule and the 12 days of Christmas, extending from basically December 20th to January 6th, you, my friend, are a werewolf. I wonder if that explains some of my friends' behaviors that are born between those days. Yeah, there's been a couple of things that have been talked about in the media with it. There was actually a massive movie that was put out called The Curse of the Werewolf. And it was done in 1961. And it was about how a young woman who was sexually assaulted in a Spanish prison escapes and lives in the wild for a time before finding her way to a hospital where she is nursed back to health and gives birth to a boy on Christmas Day. This child then becomes a werewolf, and the whole lore erupts into this movie. And it doesn't matter what they do to try and break the curse, but the child still turns into a werewolf. Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I keep talking about like Europe in general, but then I found this random tidbit of a fact that not only does Europe believe this, but they believe it in Louisiana. Yep, the US of A, Louisiana believes that Santa Claus glides through the swamps and the bayous with a wolf that has a red nose. What? Like I said, I had never heard about werewolves and Christmas. I thought this was an interesting tidbit of folklore that I thought you guys would enjoy. If you have any other stories about werewolves and the Christmas time, please leave them below in the comments. I would love to read them. I find this so fascinating. Please subscribe to my channel. Turn on the notifications. I will be uploading for the rest of December, and I'll be back in the new year. Bye, guys.